Every year in the NFL, teams finish the regular season in one of three ways. They surprise us, they do about as expected, or they disappoint us. I covered the disappointing teams a few weeks ago, so today we're going to take a look at the teams who surprised us.
Fires, caught, touchdown, Christian Kirk.
Side note, even though the Vikings finished with a record a few games above expected, I covered how much of an anomaly they were in my previous video, and they were a one and done in the playoffs, so I'm not going to be covering them. Up first, the team that pulled off the biggest heist of 2022.
I mean, Pete Carroll's out there talking about Drew Lock and Geno Smith yesterday. You'll be awful. You're going to really see Russell Wilson's value.
Like many big trades, just about every sports show asked the question, who won the trade? But no one was asking the question, who's going to be better in 2022? That's because the answer seemed obvious. Denver was going to be competing for a playoff spot, while the Seahawks had entered a very obvious rebuild. And with either Drew Lock or Geno Smith at quarterback, they were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. The preseason odds saw them winning around 5 to 6 games. But the narrative between these two teams began to shift as early as week 1. In perhaps one of the most anticipated Seahawks games in recent memory, Russell Wilson's return felt like a playoff game, and the Seahawks would come out victorious. The media felt like this was simply a feel-good story, and things would return to reality following the game, but they kept rolling.
Oh, they lined up with him offset.
Smith looking for the end zone and Lockett. Oh, White drops it in. Tyler Lockett with the touchdown. You kidding me?
At the end of the regular season, Seattle finished 9-8, a huge step up from where they were predicted to finish. Geno Smith, of all people, earned a Pro Bowl invite, which was the first of his career, and this offense finished as a top 10 unit and made the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Broncos finished with a much worse record. Even though the Seahawks got beat in the wild card, the fact that they made it is incredible, and with a massive haul of picks in the upcoming draft, including a top 5 selection, the future looks bright in Seattle. Now, before we continue on to the next team, this video is sponsored by Rocket Money, formerly Truebill. So, as someone who recently became a father, tracking my monthly expenses has become a must, and Rocket Money is an all-in-one finance platform that helps you save more and spend less. This personal finance app allows you to manage subscriptions, lower bills, build a custom budget, and grow your savings all in one place. Personally, I use Rocket Money to cancel subscriptions that I no longer want and completely forgot that I had in the first place. Also, I use it to set up budgets where I get notifications when I've exceeded those. And lastly, it monitors my credit and gives me insight on ways I can improve it. To save more and spend less, join the 3.4 million members using Rocket Money. I got the hookup. Go to rocketmoney.com/KTO or click the link in the description to get started for free or unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/KTO to get started for free. So everybody in this video made the playoffs except for one team, but they still deserve a spot with how their season ended. And that would be the Detroit Lions. Coming off a 3-13-1 season, the Lions were the quote-unquote team you cheer for outside your own team. They were on Hard Knocks, and Dan Campbell comes off as a very likable coach. But expectations for 2022 weren't very high for this team. They were considered a bottom 6 or 7 roster in the preseason, and to make matters worse, their defense got off to a historically awful start through 7 games. And to that point, Detroit arrived at a woeful 1-6 record. Amidst a 5-game losing streak, with their season on the ropes, the Lions grinded out a win versus divisional rival Green Bay, and from there, they continued to win. Somehow, this team finished the year on a 8-win, 2-loss run, besting Green Bay once again in the season finale, which would have landed them in the playoffs if it weren't for Seattle winning in Week 18. After hanging 40 points 3 separate times, this offense was one of the more entertaining units to watch. And to end the year, the Lions finished top 5 in scoring, led by 17 rushing touchdowns by Jamal Williams, and Jared Goff looked revitalized, putting together one of the best seasons of his career. With the return of rookie receiver Jameson Williams next season, and perhaps a few key additions to help out the defense, this team could be a tough out in 2023. Up next, another team who started the year out rough only to make an epic turnaround mid-season.
Rolling to his right now. Throws it, batted up, and intercepted.
After a 3-6 start, and considering their disastrous 2021 season with Urban Meyer, the Jags seemed more likely to possess the number 1 pick than make the playoffs. With the rough season that Trevor Lawrence had had to that point, people began to wonder, was he damaged goods? Is he not going to become the prince that was promised? Well, those questions were put to rest throughout the back half of the season, as Lawrence was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He put up 17 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions throughout the final 9 games, and in that span, they finished 7-2, which included big wins versus the Ravens, the Titans twice, the Jets, and the Cowboys. When it was all said and done, they ended up winning their division and snuck into the playoffs. Now, there couldn't be a better one-game representation of Jacksonville's season than their wildcard matchup versus the Chargers, where after getting down 27-0, where Trevor Lawrence threw a horrendous 4 interceptions, they stormed all the way back to win 31-30. Lawrence would end up throwing 4 touchdowns and also had this clutch 2-point conversion. Of course, the game didn't end without controversy, but the fact that Jacksonville managed to be back in that game was incredibly impressive nonetheless. After being projected to win only 6 or 7 games, their offense and defense finished 10th and 12th, respectively, in scoring. This is a huge win for this organization, regardless of what happens the rest of the playoffs. Moving on to the next team on the list, another surprise at quarterback.
On second down, going deep. Daniel Jones. Did he catch it? Darius Slayton has a giant touchdown.
In 2021, the Giants finished 4-13, with the second worst scoring offense in the NFL. And throughout the previous 5 seasons, this team had won 6 games or less in each of those. Insert new head coach Brian Daboll. Daboll landed his first head coaching job after the work he had done with Josh Allen over the previous 4 years. He took a turnover-prone Allen and turned him into one of the best quarterbacks in football. Daniel Jones, prior to 2022, has had issues holding onto the ball, so it became Daboll's mission to clean this up and revitalize this offense. Things happened faster than expected.
Good ball handling from Jones, room to run. There goes Daniel Jones. Touchdown Giants.
The Giants jumped out to a shocking 7-2 record. The defense had improved. Saquon was having a huge bounce back year, and most importantly, Daniel Jones was efficient, being utilized as both a passer and a runner, without turning over the football. After that impressive start, however, this team began to stumble, crawling their way to a 9-7-1 finish. Luckily, that great start managed to sneak them into the playoffs, and when it mattered most, this offense rolled over the Vikings and advanced to the divisional round. At this point, the Giants have surpassed all expectations. Brian Daboll is a Coach of the Year contender, but according to The Athletic, 2 coaches have better odds at winning the award. The first that we will mention is Nick Sirianni. After finishing 9-8 in 2021, the Eagles under Sirianni were expected to be around the same record. This offense, with a few key additions like A.J. Brown, was supposed to be good, but I don't think anyone knew they were going to be this spectacular.
Deep ball it is, and it is caught for the touchdown.
Unexpectedly, Jalen Hurts went from average in 2021 to playing like an MVP in 2022. In the games that he started, Philly went a ridiculous 14-1, winning by double digits in 7 of those contests. Of course, Hurts was aided by great coaching, a stacked O-line, and incredible skill players around him, like Miles Sanders, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown. Overall, this team dominated on both sides of the ball with a league-leading 8 Pro Bowl players. When the regular season was all said and done, this team not only managed to win the most stacked division in football, they also clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC. But as impressive as their regular season was, with the shoulder injury to Jalen Hurts, we don't know how limited he will be the rest of the playoffs. So the matchup between the Eagles and the Giants, shortly after this video comes out, will be a huge win for either team. Now, the last team in this video might seem odd that they made it here in the first place, but hear me out. So the 49ers were expected to be a playoff team, as most of you know. In fact, They made it to the NFC Championship last season and nearly won that game. So why are they a surprise? Simple. Kyle Shanahan took one of the most disastrous quarterback situations of any team in 2022 and has turned it into magic. As many of you remember, to start 2022, there were talks of Jimmy G being traded, and Trey Lance was going to step into the starting quarterback role. But the Niners decided to hold on to Garoppolo as the backup, and unfortunately, Lance suffered a devastating season-ending injury in Week 2. For the bulk of the season, Jimmy G started and played about how we expected, and because this team is so talented, they went 7-4 in the games that he started. But then he also got injured, and the Niners were down to their last gasp at quarterback. Insert the third stringer and the last pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, Brock Purdy. To say that there's been a bigger surprise player during this NFL season than Brock Purdy, you'd need a very convincing argument, because Purdy has been unbelievable considering the circumstances. This rookie 7th round pick was forced into action in Week 13, and in the 6 regular season games he played in from that point, the team scored more than 30 in 5 of them. Do you realize how wild that is? Let me put it this way. Most third-string quarterbacks don't step in and play decent in 6 games, let alone leading the entire NFL in quarterback rating. And they didn't lose a single game in that span. So I'll ask you guys watching, what do you think of Brock Purdy? Has these games been more of a product of Kyle Shanahan being a great coach? Or is this kid the real deal? One thing's for sure, there's never been a more relevant last pick of the draft after seeing what he did versus the Seahawks in the wild card.
He's in trouble, but keeps it alive and finds Mitchell. Improvisation leads to a touchdown.